The calm of the evening was shattered by a single phone call. Sharon's mother, Yvonne, could hardly catch her breath as she reported her daughter's disappearance to the authorities. She left for pizza, but she never came back. Her voice quivered, but the horror in her words was clear. Hours turned into days, and despite a massive search, there was no sign of Sharon. But then, on April 1st, 1975, a discovery was made in a quiet, wooded lot far from home. Sharon was found, her life taken in the most brutal way. But what if I told you that the key to solving this case was hidden in plain sight? A piece of evidence that would go unnoticed for decades, until the advances of modern science finally made the truth impossible to ignore. The chilling reality, the camera caught it all. Every moment, every clue, captured, yet unanswered, until now. Sharon Kim Pryor was born on February 9, 1959, in Montreal, Quebec. She grew up in the tight-knit neighborhood of Point St. Charles, where she was known for her bright smile and infectious energy. As a 16-year-old, Sharon was the kind of person who always made those around her feel special. Whether it was lending a hand to a friend or simply sharing a laugh, she had a heart full of kindness. Sharon wasn't just the life of the party, she was also the one who would check in on her friends when they needed it the most. It wasn't hard to see why so many loved her, and her family knew how lucky they were to have her. Sharon was raised by her mother, Yvonne, after her parents divorced. Though her family faced their challenges, Sharon kept them strong. She had twin younger sisters, Doreen and Maureen, who fondly remember their big sister as a constant source of love and support. Doreen once said that Sharon was the glue that held the family together. She was the person who would keep everyone laughing and make sure that no one ever felt alone. Her warmth was a comfort to all who knew her. Like many young people, Sharon had big dreams. She loved animals and had always wanted to become a veterinarian. It was her dream to help animals in need and make the world a better place for them. She was driven, always working hard in school and striving to achieve her goals. Even at such a young age, Sharon had already shown the qualities that would have made her an incredible person in any profession: caring, hardworking, and determined. On the night of March 29, 1975, Sharon Pryor left her home around 7 p.m. to meet some friends at a local pizzeria on Wellington Street in the Point St. Charles neighborhood of Montreal. It was a typical evening for a 16-year-old girl, excited to hang out with her friends and enjoy some pizza. But what was supposed to be a fun, casual night quickly turned into a nightmare. Sharon never made it to the pizzeria. As the hours passed and Sharon still hadn't returned home, her mother, Yvonne, began to grow increasingly worried. She knew something wasn't right. It was unlike Sharon to stay out so late without calling or checking in. By 11 p.m., Yvonne's worry had turned into fear, and she made the difficult decision to report her daughter missing to the police. Little did she know, this would be the start of a long and terrifying journey to find her beloved daughter. The community immediately rallied around Yvonne, hoping for Sharon's safe return. Police officers, local volunteers, and neighbors all pitched in to search the streets, alleys, and parks, hoping for any sign of Sharon. The entire neighborhood was on edge, holding on to hope, but as the night stretched on with no word from Sharon, the situation grew more dire. The fear and uncertainty took hold of the whole town as everyone wondered, what had happened to Sharon? Why hadn't she returned? The disappearance of a young girl in their tight-knit community was a terrifying thought. The search intensified, but Sharon was nowhere to be found. As the hours ticked by, the sense of dread and confusion only grew, leaving Yvonne and the entire community waiting for answers that, at that time, seemed impossible to find. 3 long days passed with no sign of Sharon. The entire community continued to search, hoping for a miracle. But on April 1st, 1975, the unthinkable happened. Sharon's lifeless body was discovered in a vacant lot in Longueuil, a city located across the St. Lawrence River from Montreal. It was a quiet, isolated area, and her body had been hidden away in the woods, far from the bustling streets she was last seen on. The news quickly spread, and the small town was shaken to its core. The discovery of Sharon's body was nothing short of heartbreaking. The authorities immediately began to examine the crime scene, only to find the evidence of a horrific crime. Sharon had been brutally attacked. She had been raped, beaten, and suffocated. It was clear that her life had been taken in a violent and senseless way. The evidence around her body only deepened the tragedy. A man's t-shirt had been used to restrain her, which seemed strange and unsettling. Near her body, police found tire tracks, suggesting a vehicle had been involved in the crime. These clues raised even more questions. Who could have done such a thing, and why? At first, the investigators tried to gather every piece of evidence that could help them understand what happened. They managed to extract DNA from Sharon's shirt, hoping that it might lead them to the person responsible. However, the evidence was not enough at the time to make a match. The DNA was insufficient for further testing, and the police were left without a clear suspect. But despite the setback, they made sure to hold on to the evidence, believing that someday, new technology would provide the answers they so desperately needed. The scene was haunting. Sharon's vibrant life had been taken too soon, and the details of her death were both disturbing and tragic. The case became more than just a missing person case. It was a mystery that would go unsolved for decades. The authorities, the family, and the community were left with nothing but questions, and it seemed like they might never get the answers they were hoping for. Just days after Sharon vanished, a 22-year-old woman came forward with a disturbing story. She reported that she had been attacked by a man on the very same street where Sharon was last seen. The woman claimed that the man had tried to abduct her at knife point. Fortunately, she managed to escape, but the encounter left her terrified. Her description of the attacker seemed eerily familiar to those who had been following Sharon's case. The man in the woman's story was described as being tall, with blue eyes, brown hair, and a mustache strikingly similar to the profile of the person who had been seen with Sharon earlier that evening. The connection between the two incidents was too strong to ignore. Could it be that the same man who attempted to kidnap this woman was also responsible for Sharon's abduction? The police were now looking at this as a possible lead, and the community's fear grew even stronger. The description of the suspect was now a key piece of the puzzle. While the woman's encounter had ended in her escape, the parallels between her experience and Sharon's disappearance were chilling. It suggested that whoever had taken Sharon was the same person who had attempted to harm someone else just days before. This was a crucial link in the investigation, raising more questions about the identity of the man and whether these two crimes were connected. In June 2022, there was a major turning point in Sharon Pryor's case. Thanks to advancements in DNA technology, investigators were able to retest a critical piece of evidence, a T-shirt found at the crime scene. For years, the DNA from the T-shirt had been sitting in a storage box, waiting for the right technology to bring it to life. With the help of new, more powerful DNA testing methods, the case finally took a dramatic turn. The breakthrough came when the DNA found on the T-shirt was matched to a man named Franklin Maywood Romine. Romine had died in 1982, but his criminal history was disturbing, and his name had never been connected to Sharon's murder until now. He had been involved in various criminal activities in the past, including a rape conviction, but he had never been considered a suspect in Sharon's case. Despite his past, no one had ever suspected him to be the person who took her life. Romine's criminal history now seemed to line up with the details of the case, but it didn't end there. Investigators knew that Romine had lived in Montreal at the time of Sharon's murder, and they needed to confirm the connection. To do that, Romine's body was exhumed from a cemetery in West Virginia, where he had been buried since 1982. This was an unusual step, but it was necessary to find out if Romine's DNA matched the evidence found at the crime scene. After further DNA testing on his remains, the unthinkable happened. The results confirmed that Romine was indeed the killer. The DNA matched not only the T-shirt found at the scene, but also the physical description of the man seen with Sharon just before her disappearance. When the news broke that Sharon's case had been solved, her family was left grappling with a mix of emotions. After 48 years of uncertainty and heartache, they finally had answers. But while the truth about Sharon's killer had been uncovered, it didn't bring their beloved daughter and sister back. The weight of knowing who was responsible for her tragic death was both a relief and a heavy burden to bear. Doreen, Sharon's younger sister, shared her feelings with the public, expressing the bittersweet nature of the closure they had finally received. "The solving of Sharon's case will never bring Sharon back," she said. "But knowing that her killer is no longer on this earth brings us some closure." It was a powerful statement, reflecting the long journey the family had endured. For years, they had lived in a state of uncertainty, wondering who had taken Sharon's life. Now, they knew the truth, but that truth was a painful reminder of what they had lost. The emotional impact on the Pryor family was profound. Though they were grateful to have the answers they had waited so long for, there was also a deep sadness that came with the realization that Sharon's life had been cut short so violently. The closure they felt was tempered by the fact that they could never undo the pain of losing her. However, the knowledge that Sharon's killer would no longer be able to hurt anyone else gave them a small measure of comfort. Sharon Pryor's murder became one of the most high-profile unsolved cases in Quebec's history. For nearly 5 decades, her family, the community, and the police were left with more questions than answers. The case weighed heavily on everyone involved. It was a constant reminder of how a young life could be taken so suddenly and how justice seemed out of reach for so many years. But, despite the overwhelming sadness and uncertainty, the case also showed something powerful: the importance of never giving up. The breakthrough in Sharon's case was a game-changer. It wasn't just about solving one crime, it highlighted how modern forensic science could bring justice to long-forgotten cases. Thanks to advances in DNA technology, investigators were able to test evidence that had been sitting in storage for years. What seemed like an impossible task became a reality. This moment served as a reminder of how far we've come in crime solving, and how important it is to preserve evidence, even when it feels like hope is lost. The case proved that with the right tools and persistence, the truth will always find its way to the surface. The resolution of Sharon's case is also a powerful message for future generations. It shows that no matter how long it takes, justice can and will be served. It doesn't matter if it takes decades or if it seems like the world has moved on, the fight for truth and accountability doesn't stop. Sharon's family had to wait almost 50 years for answers, but their persistence never wavered. The legacy of this case serves as an inspiration to others. Don't give up, even when the path ahead seems impossible. In the end, Sharon's story reminds us all that justice is worth fighting for, no matter how long it takes. Her case may have been solved after many years, but the message is clear: persistence, hope, and modern technology can bring the truth to light, even after a lifetime of waiting. Sharon's case serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of persistence. For nearly 50 years, her family and the community waited for justice, and even when it seemed impossible, they never gave up. This case shows us that it's never too late for justice to be served. No matter how much time passes, the truth can always come to light, and the fight for justice is never truly over. We must continue to push for advancements in forensic science, especially as technology improves. Every year, new tools and methods help solve old crimes, and we can use these advancements to bring closure to families who have been left in the dark for far too long. We must also make sure that families affected by violent crimes never lose hope. The journey to justice may be long, but it is worth every step. And it's important that they know they are not alone in their search for answers. As we close this chapter of Sharon's story, let's remember the message it leaves behind. Justice might take time, and it may not always come when we expect it, but it will always find a way. For Sharon Pryor, that justice has finally come, and her case will forever serve as a symbol of hope, perseverance, and the unbreakable power of never giving up. Remember, justice is a journey, not a destination. Let Sharon's story inspire you to never lose hope and to keep fighting for what is right, no matter how long it takes.